Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very, very accomplished professional, especially in the sustainability and climate change space, Mr. Chandru Badrinarayanan from India. Chandru, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Chandru is an ESG and climate change strategist. He's the managing partner of eCube Investment Advisors Private Limited, and he is the first person from India to be a member of the Global Policy and Reference Group of the UNPRI. So, Chandru, let's talk about climate change. It's the topic that has been in tremendous attention over the years, and now all world leaders are also talking about it. What are some of the challenges we face on climate change?
Yeah, thank you once again, Ashutosh, for inviting me for this great show. Climate change is a very hot topic, literally now across the globe.
Correct.
And the seeds of climate change have been sowed very, very long ago. So it's not something which is actually very recent. Because it's closely linked to actually how energy demand goes up across the world. And that is again linked up to GDP growth.
Right.
But the worries about climate change have been maybe there for the last 50 years or so, because statistically, there have been a lot of proof which has been coming up.
Right.
There are still actually the naysayers around climate change. And that's one of the challenges I can say. But it also actually, on the other hand, strengthens the resolve of those people who really want to mitigate climate change. The major challenges, I would say, that we face due to climate change are poor air quality, extreme weather changes,
Correct.
Floods and flash floods, as we are seeing very recently, landslides, which has not been very prevalent, even in India before, but now we are seeing it actually in many parts of the world, including India. Forest fires have caught on. It's been actually raising a lot of forests to the ground.
Correct.
Droughts have been increasing. Seawater levels have been rising continuously, and we can see that in many places happening.
Correct.
And that's also due to glacier melting, which is actually happening in the higher ranges, which is contributing to seawater level rise. And other things which people are not, at least in the equatorial region, are not very much conversant with that, but which is still a big danger, is permafrost melting. Permafrost, by its very name, means permanent frost.
Correct.
And that's happening in places like Siberia and the northern regions, which is leading to a lot of infrastructure damage. And it is also releasing a lot of carbon into the atmosphere, which were all buried inside.
Correct.
So permafrost melting is not a small thing. So these are, I would say, major challenges, but these are all manifesting. Now, the issue is, how are they affecting people? So they all manifest in food scarcity, water scarcity, energy scarcity, as we have actually recently seen, all the energy crunch and everything which has been happening. Then poor health, and poor nutrition, leading to slower economic growth. When this happens, it also leads to strife and war.
Correct.
Again, leading to human migration and pandemics, as we have recently actually seen. And I can only say that COVID-19 was just a trailer for what is to come. If all of us, including me, you, everyone, are not involved in actually tackling climate change.
Wow. Wow, that is a very, very serious kind of a situation we are faced with. But, again, we are talking a lot about climate change, renewable energy, sustainable transport, air quality, clean energy, and so on and so forth. What will go into achieving the goals that, as humanity, we keep setting for ourselves? And when we don't achieve them, we just move the target to the right.
So I would say that, there are quite a few things, but the most important things which would go into achieving all this is, of course, one is building awareness. A lot of people are not even aware that, how climate change affects our lives.
Correct.
That's because it doesn't happen very suddenly, except when you see flash floods and all those kind of things. And then people forget about it. Once it is, then, it goes on as business as usual.
Yeah.
There is actually a lot of activism which is happening. And politicians are actually starting to listen to all these things, especially in places like Europe. And probably we'll come to that much a little bit later. But I would say that, the policies are the ones which actually kind of are guardrails for actually, implementing a lot of these policies regarding, tackling climate change. And there has to be global consensus. So which is what all this COP meets are all about. And the important one was the one where the Paris Accord was signed, which actually says that the world has to actually, contain the average temperature rise to not more than 2 degrees centigrades, and preferably 1.5 degrees centigrade over pre-industrialized levels. And if we don't do that, then, we are in for very troubling times. So the global consensus is something, which is extremely important. And I'm very positive that, a lot of, at least, the COP meets are bringing in, a lot of consensus. May not be completely sufficient, but at least these are something, which a lot of world leaders get into it, and that's important.
Fascinating. So another aspect that I, have noticed, and while speaking to many people, is that the pandemic, because everyone was shut up inside their own homes, gave an opportunity for the planet to heal itself in several areas. What are your thoughts? They say Mother Nature can heal herself.
No, definitely. Mother Nature can heal itself, but also, it requires help from people also. So it can't, but otherwise, I would say that it is yes and no. The healing happened to some extent when there were total shutdowns, but then it is not sufficient. As most people get back to business as usual and emissions actually start picking up. And people keep forgetting, why in the first place the pandemic happened. What people have to realize is that this is Mother Nature's way of balancing things for the greater good of the planet. And the COVID-19 was payback time, which was actually happening. But if you're not listening to what nature is telling us, then the payback will be greater next time. It's as simple as that. It is very similar to what actually, if I have to put it in financial parlance or economic parlance, it is very similar to what central banks do. So they infuse liquidity when the economy is down. But if you do not taper, and I'm not saying that they should taper right now or anything like that, but if they do not taper at some point in time, the economy gets overheated and out of hand.
Fascinating.
So that's the analogy.
I've also, I've been observing climate change politics over the years, and I remember in the late 80s, early 90s, the Prime Minister of Malaysia, I think in Brazil, he had made a statement that how can you ask the developing countries to not deforest themselves when you have used up all your forests to enrich yourselves? Right. So is climate change really a victim of politics in the world?
Yeah, so I can say that politics plays an important part. Definitely, it plays an important part. But I think from that, in fact, the narrative is changing, and it can swing both ways. So climate change can be both a victim or a beneficiary of politics, because politicians listen to what people say, and if the voices of people are higher, then they would swing like that. And in fact, I'll tell you, we are seeing that happening very much in Europe. So the Green Party, it's been winning a lot of seats. And it's probably going to actually be one of the coalitions in the German, new German dispensation, governance dispensation. And they've been making a lot of inroads in the Northern Europe. Also, it's swung a little bit the other way. Today morning, I was reading in The Economist that Macron has declared $35 billion for decarbonization of the economy. And the opposition is accusing him of actually pandering to actually, the
green lobby.
Yeah, the green lobby and everything. So it can actually swing both ways. So it is both actually a beneficiary as well as a victim. But it all depends upon what people are actually wanting politicians to do and how they are representing and how they are actually pushing that agenda.
Very interesting. So my next question to you, Chandru, is that how is India faring on climate change? From what I keep reading, India seems to be ahead of the Paris targets.
Okay, that's I don't think that we are ahead of the Paris targets.
Okay.
this one. I would say that, there is a lot of action happening in India, and India has taken up, climate change very seriously.
Correct.
And but there's always this debate as to whether this is enough or not. So you can never say it is enough, but what we have to actually see is how much progress is being done and how quickly this progress is happening. Now, India's per capita emission is around 2.47 tons per annum, versus 15.5 tons, per capita in US, and around 6.5 tons per capita in China. While per capita emission is important, the overall emission of a country is even more important.
Right.
And there, we are actually number 3. That's because of the size of the population is high.
Yeah.
And that's not great news. But and also as the GDP grows, the demand for energy will grow. And it is the endeavor of every country to ensure energy security, along with food security, water security, internal security, and everything. Now that is very important, because then it is a kind of a balancing act which countries have to do, because you need to provide the energy, but at the same time, you need to provide energy which is clean, which is not very costly, because then that again affects GDP and everything. So I think, India has realized, and, thanks to the government, and the other policymakers, that, it is very important for us to diversify away from fossil fuel. And, some of the things happen at super speed when the government really wants it. It's been just probably, 18 months before nobody had heard about hydrogen, or, the other variants of, hydrogen has many variants. You've got blue, green, gray, all these things. But, you've seen that in record time, the government of India has come up with the green hydrogen policy, and industrials are catching on to that. So there are these kind of things which are happening, because the India's current energy demand is around 880 million tons of oil equivalent, and modern renewables is still a very small portion. And when I talk about the energy demand, it is not just electricity. So it is electricity, transportation, everything put together.
Sure.
While in transportation, while in electricity, the percentage of renewables is high, but overall, when you're talking about the energy demand, it's still very less. You still have almost coal, oil, and natural gas, which is not, again, a clean fuel, as a lot of people, even I used to think natural gas was a clean fuel, but it is not. It takes around 75% of the basket. So that is there. And also on the renewable energy itself, along with, apart from green hydrogen. So you've got the solar and the wind and everything, where the target set is around 450 gigawatt of renewable energy by 2030. We are currently at around 150 gigawatt.
Okay.
And I would not be surprised that, in developed countries, there is also a lot of talk of, nuclear power, which is considered to be the cleanest power, but which also has its a little bit hazards in that. But, there is a possibility, I feel, that, even that could actually come to India in coming years, as our energy demand actually increases, and it's one of the cleanest fuels actually around. In fact, yesterday itself, the price of uranium shot up by around 12%.
Okay. So, one of the things that I've often believed in and heard a lot of people say, that climate change is an attitude as well.
Yeah.
My question to you, Chandru, is that what can you and I, as average citizens, do in our daily lives that can impact in our own small way a change in the climate or support the climate? Absolutely.
No, great question, Ashutosh. Yeah, I think, so this doesn't require, actually too many complicated stuff for people to do. So it's to actually probably listen to podcasts like this, become part of climate change discussion groups,
right?
Follow entrepreneurs mining opportunities in climate change. And, there is a huge opportunity in this, and people only look at the risk side of it.
Right.
So there is a huge opportunity here, and, people can cotton on to all those actually opportunities and follow those entrepreneurs. Then raise these issues in WhatsApp groups. We raise so many issues. Why don't we actually raise these issues in WhatsApp groups and forums, as well as with politicians and political forums? Right. So once people start doing it, I think, that will actually then, kind of cascade and build momentum.
Fascinating. And you don't think, I mean, you did mention raising issues in WhatsApp groups, but I've often also seen that if you see a climate change violator and you shame that individual publicly, awareness spreads very fast.
Yeah, you see, it depends upon how we are shaming that person. So it could actually, I think, there are different ways, and these are behavioral issues.
Sure.
I agree with you that, you could actually do that, but it has to be done probably in a nicer way. Otherwise, people then, actually.
Yeah, you can swing the other side.
Yeah, swing the other side. Yeah, thanks.
Very interesting. My next question to you is on the millennials and the Gen Zs who are now inheriting the earth. And I have a lot of faith that they will really make a big difference in a world that my generation seems to have messed up completely. Based on all your work, how are the young people reacting to climate change?
Yeah, see, overall, I would say that across the world, and probably thanks to icons like Greta Thunberg, who has set a very different standard altogether of a young girl actually taking on, the mightiest politicians on climate change. So, those kind of examples are the ones which are firing up millennials. And definitely, I would say that the awareness and the urge to do more about climate change, like things like avoiding plastics and going for local food, all those kind of things are something like that, which millennials are more aware. And, because they also realize, because they have much more time in the planet to live than people of your generation. I mean, our generation. Right. So you will be almost of the same generation.
Okay. So let's move on to the next part of our conversation, which is on ESG. There is a lot of conversation on ESG in corporate boardrooms. Why is this being done? Is it because of social and government pressures, or is it because of increased awareness?
Okay, so I would say that one thing which has actually stood out is the outperformance of ESG funds vis-a-vis the other category of actually funds. So across the world we have seen this, and I've seen it from my earliest stint in MSCI when I was the country head of India. So this is something which we have seen very often, that the other ESG indexes outperform, and it is not something which is a recent phenomenon. Across 10, 12 years, and especially after 2008, this has actually been happening. So what it means is, what it's telling us is that, investors, and these are very large investors having trillions and trillions of dollars,
right?
They are worried about actually ESG. And, when money starts getting, that kind of money starts getting worried, so people do actually stand up and take notice.
Right.
So that's one of the bigger, I would say, catalyst, which then, actually leads to other things. So it leads to then, other policies coming up, so many other things actually happening. So it leads to that. But I would say the main reason is about actually all large investors. They have their own reasons for worrying. And, one of the things which people probably are not aware is, most of these large investors in developed countries, they are worried about human migration caused because of climate change. So, and, they cannot then support those pensions and everything when there is so much of migration actually happening in their countries. And so these actually have a kind of interconnected, reasons as to why all these things are happening.
Very interesting. And a question to challenge you a little bit is that, does an ambitious GDP growth target contradict a strong ESG strategy?
Definitely not.
Okay.
Definitely not. There could be short-term pain, but if we do not take action now, the pain will be permanent. Okay. So this is very similar to actually, what people face, in their individual lives also. So if you're only actually running after money, that's like GDP growth, and you neglect all other things, your mind, body, spirit, and everything, the money is not going to be of any use, and your body is going to actually go waste. So I wouldn't say that, an ambitious GDP plan would contradict our ESG strategy. Okay. But maybe in the short term, we might actually have pains, but again, so it is for governments, if they think that they're going to be there for 10, 15 years, so then, they would actually go behind and, make those changes. So which is what we're probably seeing.
Fascinating. And that gives me the segue to the next question, which is, what is your assessment of short-term and long-term impact of ESG?
Yeah, I think, I just actually mentioned about the short-term pain, which will happen, but it happens in different degrees. If you're talking about a corporate, it'll be different. If you're talking about a country, it'll be different. If you're talking about the globe, it is actually different. So the time frames are actually different. Now, the issue which happens with corporates is this quarter reporting, which then, actually kind of people think that, since we are doing quarter to quarter reporting, and if we set aside certain things for actually doing work on ESG, then it might affect. But there are a lot of things which don't really require spending money. So your diversity and inclusion policy doesn't require money. How is your board actually constituted? Doesn't require any extra money. So you have to actually, there are many things which really don't. Your governance, your social policies, they don't. And as far as the E part of ESG is concerned, it also has a payback. In fact, there is a lot of things, it actually pays back very quickly. So you could actually recycle energy in your processes. You could save energy. So there are a lot of things, which people can do. But more than that, it also brings in opportunities which people can harness. So it has it all depends upon, how you are actually able to understand and leverage that.
Fascinating. And my last question to you now, and I'm going to come back to your being a member of the UNPRI. For our viewers and listeners, tell us about UNPRI and your role in it.
Yeah, thank you. So UNPRI basically, it's called as PRI now, but it was constituted by United Nations, and its role is basically to actually bring together different, asset owners and asset managers, basically in the financial services industry, and to actually talk about policies and give a guidance to actually most of the countries and corporates and asset owners and asset managers to enhance ESG implementation across the globe.
Okay.
So that's the broader, I would say. It has many committees. One of the key committees is the Global Policy and Reference Group, of which I've recently become a member. And we've just been having a quarterly calls. And this is about actually, kind of a osmosis process of understanding, for people from every country who are involved in policy making as to what's happening on the other side. So you've got actually things like taxonomy, SFDR, so many other policies. There is something called as, Fit for 55 on the carbon border adjustment tax, which is happening in Europe, which actually has got all of these things have got reverberations across the world. So how do Indian companies actually then get affected by this, and what actions they need to take? So these are the kind of things, your understandings and other things you tend to get. And we tend to discuss all these things in these forums.
Wonderful. Chandru, we've come to the end of our conversation. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you for telling me so many amazing things on climate change, on ESG, and congratulations on your appointment as a key member from India on the UNPRI committees. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashutosh.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.